Okay, in the browser I have two tabs. The left one represents my service provider, the Centrify privilege service, and I am logged in as the cloud administrator with full admin privileges to do this configuration. And on the right we have the IDP. We're calling this Acme. We're actually using the identity service for this, and I'm logged in as the cloud administrator. What we're going to do is we're going to do some configuration in real time, but first I'm going to show you some of the configurations I've already set up just for convenience. We'll pop over to the IDP, and under settings, login suffix, you'll see I've created acmeit.com as a login suffix there. And if we pop into the users tab, we have the cloud admin at acmeit.com and Androsh consultant at acmeit.com. This is the user that we're going to use to actually federate over, and this will be used in our demonstration. Now under the roles tab, you'll see we've pre-configured a role called Federated CPS Login. So the members of this role, specifically Androsh, will be able to federate from here, the IDP, to the Centrify privilege service. And on the CPS side, under roles, you'll see we've pre-configured a role whose members will be granted access to CPS. So in other words, Androsh will need to log in to CPS. So in this role, we have the administrative right privilege management amongst others, but that's the one that's most important for granting access to CPS. Okay then, so with that, let's look at how we configure the rest of this, specifically the federation parameters between the service provider and the IDP. Let's start at the IDP then over at Acme. We're going to start by creating a new application tile. That's going to be a web app tile. We're going to do a search for Centrify, and here we'll see what may be for you a new tile, a new app. It's called a Centrify B2B app, and it allows us to do federated single sign-on. So we'll add that, and then we'll configure it. Now here in the configuration settings, the first thing we're going to do is capture the metadata that's already built in here into an XML file so that we can use it and import it on the service provider or the CPS side. So by exporting that, it ends up in my downloads folder as an XML file. I'm going to rename that just for my convenience. I'm going to call this one IDP metadata. And again, we'll use that later on to import into our service provider. Saves having to type stuff in and getting it wrong. So let's continue with this application configuration. Let's give it a more meaningful description. Let's call this Centrify CPS Federated Login. Now we have to grant access to this. So under User Access, what we're going to do is we're going to select the role that we'd already pre-configured, the Federated CPS Login role. So members of that role now will have access to this particular application tile, and we'll save that configuration. All right, now in that role, Federated CPS Login, under Members, we're going to add a member. And if you remember, we created a user called Androsh. So we search for him, select him, and we add him to this role. So now Androsh will have access to the tile that will appear on his identity portal. So now let's go to the service provider and we'll start configuring things there. In settings, we'll go to partner management and we're going to create a new partnership. So we click on the add button and let's give this a meaningful name. We'll call it Acme Outsourced IT Partnership. Now we need to add a federation domain. This is quite important. You'll remember that Androsh at acmeit.com will be coming over. So our federated domain is going to be acmeit.com. So we add that. Let's now go to the group mappings, another important section. Here in the service provider, we need to know what privileges to grant our federated users. So we're going to look for a particular attribute value in the SAML assertion. That will be the role that we've assigned to Androsh at the IDP side, Federated CPS Login. And we're going to add him to a group on this side. We'll call it Partner Consultants. And if that doesn't already exist, CPS will create it for us. Now let's go to the metadata. This should be fairly straightforward because the inbound metadata we can import from the file that we exported on the IDP side. So let's browse for that file. And in my Downloads folder, you'll remember we renamed it as IDP metadata. So let's select that and import it. Now we'll go to the outbound metadata and we'll kind of do the reverse of what we did at the IDP. We'll select option 2, we'll download the SP metadata into a file, and again for convenience I'll just rename that as SP metadata. And we're going to use that to import back at the IDP when we hop over there shortly. So we're pretty much done here. Let's save that configuration. Now let's go over to roles. Let's complete the role definition that we created earlier, which is CPS access. As a member of that role now, we're going to add the group that we created on the group mappings section of the partnership. If you remember, it was called Partner Consultants. So we'll do a search for partner, and there you'll see the group Partner Consultants. Let's add that now. Great. So now all of our federated partners that come over will be able to access CPS. So let's go back to the IDP again and we'll finish up the configuration by uploading the SP metadata that we just saved. Let's upload it from a file. We'll browse and we'll navigate to that SP metadata file. And we'll click OK. So now that metadata has been populated into the application settings. Now one change we will have to make is by default the assertion consumer service URL will actually take us to the identity service, and we want to go to the privilege service. So we rename that and change it to resources and save the configuration. So now let's see this in action. We're logged in as Andras Acme Consultant at the IDP Acme, and there's the tile Centrify CPS Federated login that we created earlier. So now if we click on that, hopefully we will be federated over to the Centrify privilege service without being prompted for login ID and password. And there we have it, success.